my patron here, David Blitz, we teach together at Central Connecticut State, and got me here almost exactly a year ago. I'm looking at his photograph. It looks like I'm having a Howard Dean Scream moment. But we were passionate on the same topic. It was last year at this time, false news, fake news is a prelude to war. We were talking about the Gulf of Tonkin resolution that got us into the Vietnam War, fake news. We're talking about remember the Maine, the hell with Spain, got us into the Spanish-American War, fake news. And but today we're going to talk a little bit about real news. And you've got some great other candidates coming. David and I have worked with Oz Grable on a lot of bipartisan initiatives at Central Connecticut State. He's an independent running for governor. Who else you mentioned? Erin Stewart. Ask her. She just visited with Donald Trump. See how that visit went. But I'm Ned Lamont, and I'm running for governor. And let me tell you why. First and foremost, I'm going to fight not for Trump values, but for Connecticut values. And let me tell you what I think that means. We respect people, whatever background, whatever their place of origin. That's what America's all about. We're stronger together, and that's what I'll be fighting for every day. We just had the vote on DACA. You probably saw the Dreamers the other day in Congress went down in flames again. You know, this is a subject that's pretty close to me. I spent some time teaching at a high school in Bridgeport called Harding High. And a lot of those kids came earlier, not documented, not speaking a word of English. And some years later, they were seniors in our accounting class, and they were some of the best students in our class. And this was 20 years ago, and I just remember the day that we were able to tell these kids, you know, you got into UConn, you know, and there were cheers. And then we realized at that point they weren't eligible for a scholarship. And I saw the look on their face. So when it comes to fighting for all of our citizens, documented and undocumented, we're proud to have them here in Connecticut, and I'll be fighting for them. Another thing that bothers me in Trump's America is sort of a gross disrespect for women. And I'll be standing tall. Let me just give you one example. It's in the workplace. And people sort of talk about paid family leave. It's, you know, a liberal thing. It's more than that. It's more than just the right thing to do. I mean, half of our families in, say, Hartford are single parent families. And most of them are single moms with 1, 2, 3 kids. And they want to work, they need to work, they have to work. But if you don't have early childhood education, if you don't have after-school activities, if you don't have paid family and medical leave, they can't work. They can't support their families. So it's not only is it the right thing to do, it's the smart thing for our state to make sure that we give each and every one of these folks the opportunity, mainly women, the opportunity to work, stay involved in the workforce, and be able to take care of their kids at the same time that they can support themselves. And I know Donald Trump has a bit of a sort of trickle-down mentality. You saw that in his recent tax bill, which really hammers Connecticut. Costs us, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars of money that flows out of our state to Washington that we don't get back. And I come from a little different background than some of the candidates. I do spend some time in small business. I'll be there fighting for a growing economy, make sure that Main Street here in Winstead is growing with a place of opportunity. But I'm also fighting for a fair economy. And I think that's another Connecticut value. And you know, one just simple idea is raising the minimum wage, $15 minimum wage. You know, as a business person, I'll be championing that. I want work to pay, and it doesn't, $15 minimum wage just doesn't raise wages for minimum wage earners. It raises wages for everybody. It helps build out our middle class. It makes us a stronger state for it. Those are Connecticut values, and that's why I'm running for governor. And we're all going to have to decide, you're going to have to decide over the next few months what Democrat gives us the best opportunity to win in November, because it's a pretty important election. And what candidate has the executive experience to help govern in a pretty tough time in the state right now. And I would say when it comes to how we win in November, you know, the insiders say I want somebody who spent a lot of time in Hartford, last 10, 20 years in Hartford, knows their, you know, way around the legislative office building. I have a different perspective on that. I do think you want somebody who's ready to come into Hartford from the outside, somebody who's ready to challenge, somebody who's ready to shake things up there, somebody who represents real change to how we deliver business up there. I think our state needs a fresh start. I think our political class needs a fresh start for what we want to do up in Hartford, and I think that gives us the best chance to win in November. Look, I challenged Dan Malloy 8 years ago. We had a pretty frisky primary going forward, and I'm not one of these guys to blame Dan Malloy for what's going on right now. He's getting hammered in the polls right now. He inherited an extraordinary mess, and he made a good faith effort to try and fund the pension in a serious way, get some reforms going on. But you know, I'm also not Dan Malloy's third term. And I think that'll be an enormous plus when the Democrats stand up to a Republican this November. And if they want to say, hey, Ned, it's all about jobs, we haven't created any new jobs, net new jobs in the last 30 years, you know, I'll be willing to tell whoever that Republican is, go ahead, bring it on. I know something about creating jobs. That's where I've spent my life. And I'm going to be able to work with small business, work with the labor community, work with trading, and make sure that we're ready for those jobs going forward.
But you are going to be inheriting that same mess, you know, that Connecticut is been saddled with here. How do you tackle it, Ned?
Well, when you say same mess can be defined as a couple different ways. Most people, when they say same mess, is look, we've had a dishonest budget for the last 10, 20 years. We've been borrowing from our future and not investing in our future. We've been letting our transportation system fall behind. Transportation should be our great competitive advantage. We're essentially located in Boston and New York, one of the greatest markets in the world. This should be an advantage, not a disadvantage. And when it comes to, you know, education, we have one of the great workforces in the country. We're aging. It's an aging workforce. We've got to train people for the jobs coming forward, and we have not been doing that. And there are, you know, there are 13,000 advanced manufacturing jobs going begging right now because they're not training the people for those jobs. So, you know, David and I at Central, and I've done this at Yale as well, we've worked with all the major employers, doing everything we can to make sure that our community colleges and our K through 12 are beginning to train people for those jobs we got to do going forward. But more specifically, that's a long-term solution, not that long-term. We get this state growing again, we get this state growing again, we give the business community, tell the business community to stop bad-mouthing the state of Connecticut and start believing in the state, start investing in the state of Connecticut again. That will be an enormous sea change. They are beginning to bring, Stanley Black & Decker, Jim Laurie over there, he just tells me, look, Connecticut, if you just can get your fiscal act together, we're beginning to onshore manufacturing. Used to be in China, now it's coming back. Okay, they're not bringing back all 20,000 jobs, but there'll be advanced manufacturing, high-skilled manufacturing jobs that could be here in Connecticut if we can get our fiscal act together. And I'll go right at it. And you said, how do we do it in the near term? I think revenues are going to be on the table. I think that we have a 1950s revenue structure in this state that's not working anymore. Our sales tax is disappearing. Our corporate income tax is disappearing. You know, GE didn't leave because their corporate income tax was too high. They didn't even pay any corporate income tax. So they. I know the story because I know one of the GE tax guys, and he goes into Jack Welch, who at that point was the president of GE, CEO, and he asked the tax guy, how much do I owe the state of Connecticut? And he said, well, how much do you want to owe? Because they did have the intellectual property, they could put that in Bermuda, they could say the profits are in South Carolina. So we're gonna need fundamental tax reform so we have a more consistent, reliable revenue stream that funds our government going forward, so that people know what they can expect. So Winstead's budget is not gonna be held hostage to a budget in Hartford that we can't figure out until November, and then by December, it's out of whack again. And that's the type of problem we have. I'll tell you one other thing, though, I think you need to win in the change is you also need a governor who you know is not afraid to stand up and challenge the old way of doing business, and stand up and challenge the entrenched interests. And there's a lot of that in Hartford if we're going to get real change. And a lot of you were with me in 2006. I took on not just George Bush and his ill-considered, one of the worst decisions in the history of the country to invade Iraq. I also took on my own party. And I think you know that I'm ready to stand up and fight hard for our progressive values. And as we were talking out here a little bit, you know, Chuck Schumer and a lot of guys, no, you can't challenge somebody from your own. That's, you know, we had the biggest turnout in the history of Democratic primaries that year. And that's how you win. You stand up loud and clear for what you believe going forward. And I've done that in my business my whole life. I mean, I took on the cable television, you know, operators, and we delivered a better service at a lot less cost for universities. And we need that innovative thinking in terms of how we deliver services so we can make sure that we don't continue to cut services for the most vulnerable in our state, but we make the investments we need in an effective way going forward. I'll tell you something else I do to stand up, and then I'll take some questions, because I think people are ready to ask some questions. I'm also, as a guy that's run a business, I can't stand a state where we sit around blaming the folks that do the work. You know, the teachers, the professors, the firemen, the cops, the nurses. I mean, there's a lot of bad-mouthing of the folks that do the work in this state. And one of the first things I'm gonna do as governor is go to each and every one of these folks I can find, you know, thank them for the good work that they are doing. You know, whenever you have a coach blaming his players, you got a problem with the coach. And I've heard a lot of that in this state. And these folks have honored their commitment to the state of Connecticut, and I'm gonna honor our commitment to them. It's not easy. You know, I was chairman of the pension board some years ago under Lowell Weicker. I know how complicated it is to mix our obligations, match our obligations with, you know, the assets, but we're gonna do that. And we're gonna do that, not tomorrow, we'll do that over a period of time. It took us 30 years to get into this pension crisis. It'll take some time to get out, but we are gonna do that. I'm gonna work like heck. Oh, I'm gonna stop. Let's take some questions. Let it rip. Yes.
Vice President Pence says that Jesus speaks to him. I'm wondering what your religious position is and how that might affect your actions as governor.
Oh, interesting. I haven't, well, I'd say I'm a spiritual person, but I'm not that religious a person. I think it gives hope and inspiration to a lot of people, and I respect that. I think we also have a brain, we're meant to use it. So when it comes to science, I think that is our God-given obligations as human beings to use our brain to the best way we can. And I can't stand what's going on in Washington where they somehow try and pit, you know, religion and science and degrade science and badmouth science. I think it's a country that's going in the wrong direction when we let that happen. I'll get back to you for the rest of that answer.
Oh, thank you.
Yes,
Go ahead, Claire.
What? Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Claire, you're up.
Okay. I think a number of things. First, I was glad to hear you make a commitment to what we used to call the living wage, but we're so slow about raising that. It's now called the minimum wage, which is $15. That's a good start for everybody. As one does that, then you have to comment what the consequences are and when they are beneficial consequences, so people can feel they're part of the movement. It seems to me that politicians need to value their best, if they can tap it, the people themselves. So that means shifting power, making it easier for citizens to organize themselves to do what they think is right. For example, what would be your position on a citizen utility board, which, do you know how that works? Which allows, which says that utilities have to put in their envelopes every month, their billing, make it easy for people to form their own citizen utility board to watch the utilities. Now, that has two pluses, it seems to me. One, you empower people to do that, they can do it, and then they watch, they become your watchdogs, if you're on the people's side, and not on the utility side. For example, they're dragging their feet. We had the tax bill pass, and that requires, if you're getting a tax credit, you know how that works. And our community lawyer immediately went to the insurance commissioner and says, where's going to be that break in the tax rate? And she's still waiting for an answer, because the lobbyists are right there, the insurance lobbyists. What would be your position there? Not, you have to.
My position there is that the power company and the cable utilities are all regulated under state charter. And that's an opportunity for all of us to weigh in, whether, Frontier or Eversource.
Under federal law to do it. Now, why do we have to work to have them do it? We do, because you have to watch.
Yeah. All I can tell you is we have an opportunity as citizens to weigh in on those decisions, weigh in on those rates, weigh in on what they're doing. When I was in the cable TV industry, we had to go to the utility commission, and lots of citizens were involved. I'll give you an example. Back then, this is in the 80s, everybody wanted a public access channel so that people could talk to the community in real citizen involvement. We were just talking, somebody here, if I was first selectman of Winstead, and I wanted really to get young people back here, make this a modern community, make this a place where people can work just as well from Winstead as they can from Midtown Manhattan, I'd push like hell through the utility commission to make sure we had a Wi-Fi hotspot here on Main Street, so that young people knew that they could come from the regional area. That's the type of way that we can weigh in. It's not just rates,
Ned,
but it's also...
Would you favor a citizen utility board? That is shifting power to the ratepayers. They can then organize, you can make a contribution, $5 for each ratepayer. You can imagine what that would amount to. They hire their own experts, and then they watch the utilities. They would then be in a position when this situation comes up that we're talking about to make sure it's enforced. In other words, they become a lobby for the ratepayers.
Well,
for the people.
Certainly the ratepayers need a lobby.
No,
How
but
that's structured, they gotta weigh in long and hard.
Would you favor such a facility?
I think so. Yeah, anything that gets citizens more involved in utility regulation, education, I think we ought to find structures to have that involvement. And we're so much better, as stronger as a state, where citizens do feel empowered and involved. I'm not a Donald Trump guy, but I love the fact that, hundreds of grassroots organizations got involved in this last election, making an enormous difference in about 50 of our municipal elections here in Connecticut. We got to keep that going. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Ned. My name's Janine Woodwell. I'm here from Litchfield. And on the same topic of ratepayers and the electricity company, many Connecticut families and small businesses and schools have moved to the use of solar to provide some of their electricity. Eversource is working to decrease over time net metering payments to zero. How can a governor for Connecticut intervene and prevent that from happening?
I think,
not just weighing in, actually prevent that from happening.
well, I probably should talk to you about what other states are doing there, but we set as an absolute goal, a zero emissions energy policy over the next period of time. We give Eversource strong incentives and disincentives to make sure that they cannot disadvantage those of us when it comes to net metering. We will make that a law of the land. That's not just in it's not just the right thing to do, it's also the smart thing to do for a state of Connecticut. Look, I make the case sometimes from a different point of view. And I say, Connecticut has the highest electric rates in the country, this side of, is it Hawaii or Alaska? It's one of those two. And that's a killer. I mean, people say it's labor rates, or they say it's taxes. Our power costs are a killer. And renewable energy is such a big piece of what's gonna make Connecticut very competitive there. So I go right at Eversource. I say, not only is it the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do, and we're gonna make it happen.
Eversource in the last election, they worked to lobby GOP state senators to pass bills that went in the opposite direction. Our state senator, Craig Minor, he was one of the co-sponsors for SB 630, which was seeking to preserve farmland historically to prevent farmers from putting solar panels on their property. So there's a lot of backroom dealing going on.
Well, we'll fight back about that. I was happy to see that there's some Republican state senator that's bringing suit against Eversource because he couldn't figure out his damn bill. So, maybe there's some cracks in the armor, but we should talk about that offline because you have a lot of insight there. Yes?
I'm relatively new to Connecticut, so if I'm pretty stupid, please forgive me. Having lived in other states, especially New York State, my perception is that coming up in this election, that the Republicans are going to say, and the voters are going to perceive, the Democrats have destroyed the state because of economic problems, unemployment, and weak economy. And I've been in other states where this time coming around, the Republicans would wipe somebody out if the Democrat was the incumbent and there's a Democrat run. Having said that, the elections we've seen in the last few months portend possibly ill results for Republicans because of Trump. So I wonder how you see that and what you would do to counteract that perception among voters.
We've seen that a lot. And unfairly, Dan Malloy is less popular than Donald Trump in the state of Connecticut right now. I say unfairly because our problems have been many decades in the making. And if, as I said before, John Rowland and Jody Rell had made the contributions to the pension fund that Dan Malloy did, we wouldn't be in this mess today. But that's a technical answer. At the end of the day, the Democrats have had the House, we've had the Senate, we've had the governorship. It's 8 years later, and we still have a mess. A mess a political mess in the sense that we can't get an honestly balanced budget, and the business community is nervous and thinking about leaving the state. And I'd say two things on that. Your job as the next governor, our job, my job as the next governor, A, to show that we are a party of change and progress, and we've learned from the last 8 years and the last 30 years. Going forward, we're going to give business and labor a real sense of direction on where this state is going. B, we do honestly balance this budget so we can start investing in transportation, investing in education, giving people a sense that this state is back on the move going forward. And C, maybe that's why you don't want somebody who's been in Hartford for the last 10, 20 years. Maybe you want somebody who comes in with a little different background, somebody who understands how small business works, somebody who's been working with labor every day and will fight for the middle class and fight for the people doing the jobs in the state. Somebody who's got 3 kids who are trying to make up their mind whether they have a home in Connecticut, they're gonna stay in New York or Boston because it's got more going on a Thursday night. So I think the Democrats will win because we are the party of change, we're the party of progress, we're the party of Connecticut values, and we're gonna show that we know what we have to do to get the state moving again.
You won't be the party of change running as a Democrat for governor with an incumbent Democrat. You're gonna have some Republican, maybe a Tea Party type, lying about what's really going on, and that's gonna catch on with people, isn't it? It seems to me like you've got a real obstacle to overcome just being a Democrat running with a Democratic incumbent governor and the legislature.
I'd say a couple of things. And remember, I challenged this Democratic incumbent governor 8 years ago. I said we have to fundamentally change the way we're going to do business, or we're going to be having the same debate in 2018 we were having in 2010. And if this Tea Party guy wants to say, where were you 8 years ago, I can come right back. I was creating jobs, I was challenging the status quo, and I think we'll be in a strong position to make that case. And if he says it's all about jobs, you know, I've created thousands of jobs, and I'd like to hear what their argument's gonna
You've
be.
got to run as a progressive, not as an establishment Democrat, right?
I am a progressive. I'll be able to show that paid family medical leave and pay equity, investments in education are what we need to do to get this state running again. It's the right thing to do and the smart thing to do. Yes?
I'm really happy to hear that you say you're a progressive Democrat, not an establishment Democrat. So speaking to that, I'm sure you appreciate how crushed Connecticut residents who are using the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, how crushed they are right now by medical costs. My husband and I are independent contractors, and we pay $1,100 a month in premiums, and that's for a silver plan. So if we ever have to actually use our health insurance for anything other than regular office visits, that's it. We have an $8,000 deductible on top of these enormous premiums. Now, when I hear establishment Democrats prop up the ACA, it's maddening to me. They say it's affordable. They say it needs to be the law of the land, that is the best that we can do. Now, if you say you're a progressive, I would certainly hope that you would push something like what Senator Blumenthal pushes, Medicare for all. As a business owner, you obviously know that medical insurance is one of the biggest costs for businesses. If we had a system in this state, it would lure so much business here if we had a single payer system in our state. We wouldn't be able to shake businesses off the stick if we had, if we could save them that sort of money. And of course, we also know so many studies have showed us that single payer is so much more affordable than this crazy system we have now. It's just basic health justice, you know, but it's also the smart and affordable thing to do.
So, as governor, I will champion a single payer system. I will work with Blumenthal. I will work for Murphy. Again, it's not just, it's the right thing to do. It's a basic right. And also, it's a burdensome system that's killing business and killing employment, making it impossible for small business. What I do in the state of Connecticut is a couple of things. I mean, one, at least allow small business and individuals, but small business in particular, to buy into a healthcare pool that we have here, the state pension plan or something else. So people have it. I was a small business guy. It was tough when you have 32 employees in Connecticut to figure out how to negotiate that. I would do something else though, because I think the whole fee-for-service healthcare system is fundamentally corrupt. I think it enriches doctors who get paid to send us to hospitals, which enriches hospitals, and they're not investing in health. And I would change dramatically the whole way we deliver healthcare in the state, starting with our state employees through negotiation, to make sure we have a health system that fights hard to keep people healthy. I think that brings down costs and is so much better for each and every one of the folks involved. We can do a lot as leaders in Connecticut. I mean, Massachusetts took the lead, ironically, 20 years ago. And I will work like heck with Murphy and Blumenthal to make sure that America takes the lead on a single payer system.
Thank you.
I hope so. I hope so. You've heard that that's what everybody cares about. Nothing but an applause besides that. So everybody cares about that.
I think I heard that.
So, yeah, I think it'll be your platform.
Mr. IT.
I'm a professor at one of the colleges, and unfortunately, a lot of my students say as soon as they possibly can, they're going to leave Connecticut. What ideas do you have to keep young people in the state?
I'd say one,
Mayor, yep.
2 and 3.
That's what'll do it.
I'd say free Wi-Fi in Winstead. I would say you graduate from the community college, you take a job in Connecticut, I forgive your loan after 3 years, so that you have an incentive to stay and grow here. And that's not great. I mean, Rhode Island and New York have free community college, so I'm not like way out there. I'm just trying to say things that are practical and real that would give people an incentive. And I know I'm in a small town, but I'll also say we gotta fight for our cities. We gotta make sure that our cities are vibrant places where young people wanna be. And part of that is a transportation system that works. So you can get the train can get to New Haven can get to New York, and you're not disconnected as a young person here. And like it or not, that's why I support electronic tolling. I cannot find an alternative way to pay for the infrastructure we need, not to mention fix the roads and bridges. And we're going backwards in this state. We're cutting back on train service. We're raising the price of public transportation and bus service. We're going backwards on this right now. And I do think that the tolling would give us the opportunity to make us competitive there again, and it represents thousands of really good paying jobs for Connecticut citizens, gets them off the minimum wage, gets them growing again, and gets the state going again.
Then I think you've gotta change your pronoun. Not fight for the people, but fight with them. And when you fight with the people, it means you give them facilities to fight for themselves, like the Citizen Utility Board. That is, when they tried that in Illinois, some years ago, watching Consolidated Edison, they saved the ratepayers $3 point some billion, and they had to return that. That's when they felt the pinch and went to the Supreme Court, got to the Supreme Court finally, where it says forcing the utility companies to insert that rate card, that join the rate group, is unconstitutional because it takes away the company's free speech.
Companies free. Citizens United on steroids.
So that, I really am going to push on that the people, if you're with the people, not doing things for them, they have plenty to say, as you can see right here. And there's talent in this group. This is just a small group. There's a lot of talent, which leads me to another suggestion on budgets. Budgets, I mean, I like to think I pay attention, but I don't understand these budgets. So you have a citizen advisory group, an expert citizen advisory. We've got plenty of retired talent in this state that you give visibility to and respect to, and you have them parse your budget and explain to the people and explain to you as governor. I think that would shake up the state. We've heard many things saying, "Oh, we are a party of change." I think that's death, because you've shown, the Democrats have shown that there hasn't been a party of change. They can't even beat the worst Republican Party in this.
Well, so they put together this commission. You probably heard of it, it's Stabilization and Economic Development Commission. And it was the exact wrong way to go about it. They said we're gonna have an outside commission that's gonna help advise the legislature on how we get this state growing again. And it was 15 white male CEOs and a couple of other folks there. And we pushed like heck to make sure that labor is represented, make sure that social services are represented, make sure that people of color are represented. And I say that because A, your recommendations are gonna be irrelevant unless you make sure that they do represent a broader cross-section of what Connecticut's all about. And B, you'll learn so much more about what we need to do going forward. And we had some success there. At least all labor came in and testified last week and said, this is our take on where the state's gotta go and how we change going forward. And, but I don't agree that the Democrats give up where the party of change. I think that is exactly who we have to be, what we have to do. And the last 8 years did not bear that out, but that's about to change.
All right, they've heard that before, the citizenry, in many different settings, in many different states. I'm just saying, watch the language. Use a little different.
With instead.
You see what I'm saying?
I do,
You get, and then we're going forward. Going forward. I mean, most of the stuff people have said they're going forward with has put us backward. So you just watch the language.
But let me push back a little bit, and then I'll take the question. I mean, we've sort of been derelict in leadership in this state. And you push everything over to the legislature, and all they do is raise this rate a little bit or excise out daycare and line items like that. I think you need a governor who takes the lead. I think you need a governor who talks to people like you every day and makes damn sure that I have folks behind me making, I'm listening and we're leading. But what we've lacked is somebody willing to take that leadership to make the big changes when it comes to how we raise our revenue, make the big changes in terms of how we deliver our services, because there's no more room to do it around the edges anymore. We've run into that for the last 20 years, and that's why we're falling behind. Yes, sir.
That's okay.
That's good. Yes.
Yeah.
Myrna.
We have 169 towns in cities in the state of Connecticut. And one of the things we absolutely need to do, and it comes from the top, is to regionalize. It would save huge amounts of money. Just to give you an example in education, Region 10 is doing okay. Litchfield schools are dying. Terryville schools, they have a brand new school in Terryville, they're dying. I was sitting with a group of my fellow Democrats in Harwinton, and I said, you know, why don't we reach out to Litchfield? Oh, no, we can't bus our kids that far. Our kids can't go to school that far. And my answer is, I was 11 years old, and I took the subway from all the way out in Queens to go to school in Manhattan, because it was a good school. And I don't see why we can't move a kid from Harwinton the 15 minutes it takes to get them over to Litchfield, or move a kid from Litchfield to get them over to Harwinton. And we need to have this change. What do you, as governor, plan to do to lead that at the top?
So a couple of things. Remember, I mean, people come to, hey, we need county government, and Connecticut's half the size of Brooklyn. I mean, so first of all, you know, we are a county, so we can do a lot from a, you know, when it comes to purchasing and 911 and a whole variety of services that don't take away anybody's local independence, but provide much more efficient ways to deliver service. You brought up education. I mean, here's one idea, but I'm fleshing it out so I could use some, you know, input on it. You know, we have a lot of our schools are sort of not fully occupied at this point, and you know, maybe we put more money into magnet schools so that they serve a regional purpose. So I fund 100% of the magnet schools, but we don't fund 100% for that local K through 6 or K through 12 for just each of those towns. So we give people incentives to regionalize education where we can do that. Incentives for a common superintendent of schools and police chiefs. Nobody wants to give up their local control. That's what I don't like about county government. I want Winstead to be able to control its own destiny. But Myrna, when it comes to the delivery of services, we ought to be able to provide a lot of different ways that we can bring down the cost for everybody there. And those are just a few specific ideas. But I think it starts at the top. I think it starts in Connecticut. I think it starts in Hartford, finding ways that we can buy health care for you at a lot less cost. We can you know, deliver some of these services in a way that benefits the local communities and local control.
Well, if nobody's gonna ask this
Oh,
question.
only one more. Then we'll get this.
Okay.
My turn. You may not hear this question here. I think, I agree with you. I think that Ben Malloy had the best intentions and came into Hartford and learned a lot of very hard lessons about what it's like to govern the land of steady habits. I think that a question that you ought to consider, and maybe you speak on it or perhaps consider it for future, you would certainly be asked in Bridgeport or New Haven or Hartford, what about the criminal justice system? The gritty, dysfunctional, secretive criminal justice system that's operated like a fiefdom, where very little thought is given and everything is turned over to a very secretive group of people who don't want to share a lot because they think that there shouldn't be much input from the outside. And if there's any doubt about that, you ought to go to Hartford and listen to some of the hearings or testify at them, where you will see that there's a lot of resistance to any outside input, unless you're a commissioner of something or other. So there, I guess.
Look,
that's
I think
fine.
our criminal justice system in this country is criminal. I think we are throwing people into jail, they come out much worse off, they don't have any training, they don't have any basic skills. It's racially tinged, to put it very mildly, in terms of what we're doing to folks, unfairly applying the laws. I'll tell you, you don't have to write this down, but anyway. I mean, there's a guy named Joe Ganim who's running for governor, and he was mayor of Bridgeport, and went away to jail and came back, and he has a fair amount of support from folks in the black community. And folks in the cities just say, this, you know, my brother was hammered by this unfair system as well. And you know, people don't believe in a justice system in this state. So so I would say a couple things. I mean, one, I was just at a couple of the community colleges where we're getting folks out of prison early, relief, and they're doing a skilled job training. You talk to professors there, the second chance. They are some of the best students in that, you know, community college when it comes to advanced manufacturing. That's what we should be trying to do. Two, I would legalize a pot tomorrow. I just think it's crazy that we're throwing people into jail for what we're doing there. That would provide a lot of relief, and also would provide a certain respect for the legal system. But when we have laws, we're going to enforce the laws we believe, or we're not going to, you know, not enforce laws we don't really believe. So I would definitely make those type of changes as well. But you just got to fundamentally respect folks, and I think we have a criminal justice system that lacks that fundamental respect for people. And if they make a mistake, we work like heck to make sure they have a chance to get up and get back in the game. And that would be my fight every day. And a little credit where credit's due. Dan Malloy, I think, has taken the lead on that as a state, and I'd like to continue on those efforts.
Thank you.
One of the things I have to say is he gave the State of the State speech this year that I thought was wonderful, because it did accentuate the positive things that we've forgotten how much better it was, the different things that have happened, not just according to criminal justice, but just a whole variety of different things. You just don't even remember how our with the gun bans and things like that this state has done, that has dropped the homicide rate dramatically. These are things that need to be accentuated, and that you can say, this is what we're going to continue on this path, because there are a lot of good things that have gone, but the budget thing has just overrode everything, and that he inherited. He did, and it's not as though he actually, I mean, he could put forward budgets, but if the legislature isn't listening, I mean, all he was able to do was take off, 10% here and 10% there on all the things that people liked, and which really infuriated people.
That was a horrible budget last time. Everybody celebrates it's a bipartisan budget.
Right. And
all we did was cut the folks who are the most vulnerable and paper over for things.
Right.
It's exactly the wrong way to go.
Yeah, and
but you're right on guns. I mean, my God, look, you see what happened in Florida. For us, Sandy Hook is right here. It was like yesterday. We all remember exactly
and we
what
learned
that was.
from it.
And we've been a leader on that. And I give a big shout out to Chris Murphy, who down in Washington, D.C. has been the leader. He went right to the floor of the Senate and spoke for hours after the Florida incident. And we're going to remind people and shame people every day what our gun laws do or don't do. And look at it compared to other countries. I mean, those laws and background checks have made an enormous difference from Australia to Europe and such. And